They were celebrating in my living room when she said it. My name's Owen. I'm 33, and for the past decade I've lived what most of my family would call a quiet life. I'm not flashy. I don't post much. I don't beg for approval. And because of that, I've learned one consistent truth about my family. If you're not demanding attention, you're forgotten. Or worse, labeled the backup. Growing up, I was always the other son. My younger brother, Connor, was the golden child. Athletic, charming, loud in all the right ways. If he broke a window playing football, it was boys being boys. If I forgot to do a chore because I was studying, it was disrespectful. It was always like that. Every compliment I got was framed around Connor. You did well on your test. Owen, maybe you'll catch up to your brother someday. But I never made a fuss. Not because I didn't feel it, but because deep down I thought maybe if I just stayed the course, kept working hard, they'd see me, appreciate me, or at the very least, stop using me as a contrast to make Connor look shinier. I graduated early, got a job in tech, and eventually bought a modest but beautiful home just outside the city. I didn't announce it. I didn't invite anyone over for a tour. I just built my life, one step at a time. And when the pandemic hit and remote work became permanent, I poured my energy into renovating the house with my own hands. It was a labor of love. Every tile, every shelf, every little detail. It became my sanctuary, my space, which made it all the more insulting when my mother referred to it as Connor's future home. That moment didn't happen overnight. The lead-up took years, and it started with a phone call 6 months ago. "Hey, sweetie," my mom said in that sing-song voice she uses when she wants something. "Connor's looking for a place to propose to Natalie. You remember Natalie, right?" "Of course. That's his girlfriend. She's a fiancée now, technically," she said, giggling. "He's going to pop the question soon, and we were thinking it might be nice to do it at your place." I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to be generous, but because of the way she said, "we." "My place?" I asked, already knowing where this was going. "Well, it's just, Connor wants something intimate, and your backyard is just so lovely with the lights and that wooden deck you built. Oh, and that little fire pit area. Remember when you showed me that? It's perfect, and you wouldn't even have to worry about anything. We'd handle food, decorations, everything. So it's a proposal?" "Yes, and then a little celebration afterward. Just close family and a few friends." I said yes. Like an idiot, I said yes. Partly because I figured it'd be a small event, and partly because, I won't lie, a part of me was flattered. It felt like they were finally acknowledging that I'd made something of myself. That maybe, for once, my space was worth showing off. That illusion didn't last long. The proposal turned into an engagement party, then a rehearsal dinner, and before I could catch my breath, they were calling it the family estate. My mom said it casually one night while I was on the phone with her. "When Connor and Natalie move in, maybe they'll let you stay in the guest room, just like old times." I laughed. She didn't. It took everything in me not to say something then, but I was still clinging to this delusion that maybe it was a joke. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe, if I just let it go, they'd come to their senses. But no, it got worse. Connor started stopping by unannounced with Natalie, showing her around like he was the listing agent. I caught him once sketching something in a notebook on my kitchen counter. "What's that?" I asked. "Oh, just some layout ideas," he said with a grin. "You know, for when we redo the place. Natalie wants an open concept between the kitchen and living area. Maybe a skylight or two. And I've got a buddy who can redo the floors for cheap." "Connor," I said flatly, "this is my house." "Yeah, man, of course," he said. "But Mom said you might be looking to move eventually, and I figured." I walked out. I didn't trust myself to speak. Every time I tried to bring it up, to set a boundary, I'd get steamrolled. "Don't be so sensitive," my mom would say. "Connor's just excited." Or, "You've always been so generous, Owen. Don't start being petty now." That one really got to me. As if saying "this is my house" was somehow petty. As if defending the life I built made me the villain. And then came the engagement party. They didn't even ask. I just got a group text from my mom that said, "Save the date. Connor and Natalie's engagement bash at Owen's place." The flyer she attached had a picture of my backyard on it. The one I built with my own 2 hands. The pergola I constructed. The garden lights I wired. All displayed like it was part of their love story. I didn't reply to the text. Not even a thumbs up. But I didn't stop it either. Not yet. Part of me wanted to see how far they'd go. Part of me wanted to know if they'd even realize how wrong it was. They didn't. The day of the party, I watched from the upstairs window as guests trickled in. My house, the one I mowed, painted, repaired, was decorated in gaudy balloons and banners. There was a giant sign over the front door that said, "The future begins here." Inside, my kitchen was transformed into a serving station. They'd brought in catering trays and moved my furniture to make room for a makeshift bar. My framed photos had been taken down, replaced with engagement photos of Connor and Natalie. Even my art, my personal paintings, had been stuffed into a hallway closet. When I came downstairs, nobody greeted me like the homeowner. They greeted me like the help. "Hey man, could you grab more ice?" one of Connor's friends asked, waving toward the garage. Natalie barely acknowledged me. Connor was already tipsy, arms slung around her as he gave a speech to a circle of relatives. I lingered near the doorway, watching, wondering if anyone would even thank me. That's when my mom raised her glass. "I just want to say," she began, standing on the deck steps, "how proud I am of my boys. Especially Connor, my shining star. You've always made us proud. You've always led with heart, with strength, with passion. You were born for big things. And this house, this home, it's only the beginning." People clapped. She wasn't done. "And to Owen," she smiled, looking right at me. "You were always the backup son, the steady one, the one who didn't need much. And we're so grateful, so grateful that you've shared this space with your brother. He deserves it." I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. I just raised my glass, nodded slowly, and stepped back into the house. Because what they didn't know, what nobody in that backyard knew, was that 2 days before the party, I'd had a quiet meeting with someone. A woman named Liana. She was smart, efficient, and incredibly thorough. She was also the new owner of the house, and they were celebrating in her living room. I signed the paperwork that morning, and in about 10 minutes, she was scheduled to arrive, just in time for the second toast. The doorbell rang precisely at 6:42 p.m. I was standing in the hallway, listening to the muffled sound of laughter and clinking glasses spilling in from the backyard. The scent of catered shrimp skewers and cheap white wine hung thick in the air. My family, my flesh and blood, was outside celebrating my brother's engagement in a house they thought was already theirs. I opened the door. Liana stepped inside with quiet confidence. She was dressed in business casual, navy slacks, a cream blouse, and a leather folder tucked neatly under one arm. Her dark hair was pulled into a neat ponytail, and her eyes met mine with a calm but curious expression. She glanced around the entrance, taking in the noise, the decorations, and the faint sound of Connor's booming laugh. "Do they know?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "Not yet." She gave a small, tight smile. "Should be fun." I offered her a drink, more out of habit than hospitality, but she declined. Instead, she opened her folder and started sorting the documents: deed transfer, title confirmation, and a polite notice to vacate for non-owner residents. We drafted it more for formality than force. After all, this wasn't an eviction. Not technically, but it was a wake-up call. A hard one, and I wanted them to feel it. We waited a minute, two. Then I nodded, and we stepped out together. The backyard fell silent when we appeared. The laughter died in an awkward stutter. All eyes turned to us. I watched Connor's brows pinch slightly, his drunk smirk fading just enough to betray a flicker of confusion. My mom, still holding her wine glass from the last toast, squinted at Liana like she was an unexpected tax collector. "Everyone," I said calmly. "This is Liana. She owns the house now." For a moment, no one said anything. Then my dad, who hadn't spoken much all evening, as usual, chuckled and said, "Don't be dramatic, Owen." But Liana stepped forward, offering a polite, measured smile. "Actually, he's not. I finalized the paperwork this morning. I'm the new legal owner of this property. You're all welcome to stay for the rest of the evening, of course, but after tonight, this is no longer a family residence." Connor stood up slowly from his seat near the fire pit. "Wait, what are you talking about? This is my brother's house." "It was," Liana said, not unkindly, "until he sold it." My mother's face drained of color. "You're joking." "I'm not." "Why would you do that?" she snapped, turning on me. "Owen, this is your brother's engagement party." "Exactly," I said. "His party. In my house. A house you've been calling his. A house you decorated, rearranged, and took over without ever asking if that was okay. You planned an entire future around my property, Mom." You stood on my deck and toasted Connor like this was already his. So now, it's no longer mine either. My voice was steady, but inside, I was vibrating. With rage, with sadness, with years of being overlooked. Connor threw his arms out. Come on, man. This is insane. Why would you sell the house to some stranger? She's not a stranger, I replied. She's a business partner. I'm investing in a new property with her downtown. It's an apartment complex, one I own half of, because I've been working, quietly, while you were taking credit for a life you didn't build. Natalie whispered something to Connor. He ignored her. My mom finally found her voice again. You're being petty, Owen. You're punishing us for being excited, for trying to celebrate your brother's milestone. I blinked. You call me the backup son, in front of everyone. That was a joke. It wasn't. And it wasn't the first time. It's just the first time you said it out loud, with enough people around to make it feel like a speech. I looked around. A few relatives had gone quiet, their eyes dropping to the floor. A couple of cousins looked uncomfortable. My Aunt Maggie, always the most reasonable of the bunch, was actually shaking her head in disbelief. I pressed on. You never saw me. Not when I got into college early. Not when I bought this place. Not when I worked nights and weekends to make it feel like a home. And when you finally did look at me, it was to hand the keys to Connor. Liana, sensing it was time, cleared her throat gently. There's no rush tonight. Enjoy your gathering. But please be aware that I'll need access to the property for inspection starting tomorrow. I'll send formal notice to whoever is listed here. Connor looked like he wanted to punch something. My mother looked like she wanted to cry. But it was my father who said the quiet part out loud. You're just jealous. The words hit me like a slap. Not because they were new, but because of how casually he said them. Like he hadn't just dismissed my entire experience. Like decades of being ignored, sidelined, and minimized could all be explained away by some petty grudge. You think I'm jealous of him? I said slowly. I built something real. I worked for it. And you all treated it like a placeholder. Like a waiting room until the real son was ready to move in. So no, I'm not jealous. I'm just done. And with that, I turned around and walked back into the house. Liana followed. The sliding door closed behind us with a soft click. Inside, the air felt cooler, quieter. Liana leaned against the counter, arms folded. You okay? She asked. I nodded slowly. No, but I will be. Behind us, through the window, I saw Connor pacing, hands on his head. My mom gesturing wildly. My dad just sitting there, like the weight of it hadn't settled in yet. The funny thing is, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt numb, hollow, like I'd finally let go of a rope I'd been gripping so tightly my hands were bleeding. I walked upstairs, leaving the noise behind. In my bedroom, soon to be someone else's, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Then my phone buzzed. A text. From Connor. You'll regret this. Family is forever. I stared at the words for a long time. And then, without a second thought, I deleted the message. Because sometimes, family isn't forever. Sometimes, it's just a weight you finally learn to set down. The silence after the party was louder than the celebration itself. They left in waves. First the cousins, awkward goodbyes, tight-lipped smiles, not quite sure whose side to take. Then the friends, whispering behind Natalie's back as they slipped out the front gate. My parents lingered. Connor too. I could hear their voices downstairs while I packed. Low, tense, desperate. I didn't go back down. That house wasn't mine anymore. I'd already made peace with that. Or at least, I told myself I had. The next morning, I was gone before dawn. A suitcase, a duffel bag, and a folder of signed documents. Everything else stayed. Furniture, decorations, dishes. All of it. I left it behind like an old skin I no longer wanted to wear. The only thing I took from the living room was a single framed photo. Me at 18, standing in front of the house the day I moved in, holding the keys like they were a prize. Back then, I thought that house meant I'd made it. That I'd finally earned respect. I didn't understand, yet that respect doesn't come from what you build. It comes from who's willing to see you build it. For the first 2 weeks, I stayed in a studio apartment downtown that smelled vaguely like paint and emptiness. I barely slept. I answered emails on autopilot, ate cold pizza, and stared at the ceiling wondering if I'd gone too far. There were moments, brief ones, where I almost called them, almost apologized. But then I'd remember my mom raising her glass and calling me the backup son. I'd hear the entitlement in Connor's voice when he sketched out renovation plans on my counter like he was some kind of king inheriting his throne. And I'd stay quiet. They didn't call me either. Not once. Until the letter came. It was from my father. Typed, formal, signed with his full name like it was a legal document. He called my actions immature, emotionally manipulative, and a betrayal of family unity. He said I'd embarrassed them, humiliated Connor, that I should have come to them privately if I had resentments to air. Not once did he ask if I was okay. Not once did he mention the years of being overlooked. He ended it with, "You're welcome back into the family when you're ready to act like a man." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly him. So rigid, so sure of his moral high ground, even while standing ankle-deep in the ruins of his own favoritism. I didn't reply. Instead, I poured myself into the new project. Liana and I had been scouting properties for months. She was a former real estate attorney turned investor, sharp as a blade and twice as quiet. We'd met at a conference where I gave a small talk on property tech integrations. She approached me afterward, asked smart questions, and over the next few coffees, we discovered a shared obsession with long-term vision. The apartment complex wasn't fancy. Not yet. It was a half-gutted brick building on the edge of a rapidly growing district. Most people wouldn't have looked at it twice. But to me, it had something the house never did, potential not tied to anyone's approval. Every day, I showed up at 7 a.m. with coffee and blueprints, met with contractors, took notes, got my hands dirty. I was in it, fully. No family watching over my shoulder. No brother mocking my progress. No parents offering half-hearted praise. Just work. Just me. And it was healing. Slowly, the hole they left, the one I thought would swallow me, started to fill. Not with spite, not even with pride, but with peace. I didn't need their applause anymore. Still, the world has a way of circling back. It was a Thursday morning when I saw Connor again. I was in line at a bakery near the site, holding a muffin and skimming a contractor invoice on my phone. I heard the voice before I saw the face. "Wow, look who's slumming it with carbs." I turned. There he was. Designer hoodie. Sunglasses pushed up on his head. Same cocky grin, a little tighter now. "Connor," I said. He stepped into line beside me. "So, is this where you live now?" Bet Dad's thrilled. I didn't bite. "You following me?" "Natalie works a block over. We're apartment hunting. I saw your name on one of the blueprints outside." He paused, tilting his head. "Didn't think you had it in you. Selling the house. Kicking us out like that. You really went for the jugular." "It was mine," I said quietly. "You can't kick people out of what they never owned." He let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, you didn't just burn a bridge. You napalmed it." Mom's still crying over that speech. I didn't respond, because I remembered her smile as she called me the backup. She hadn't been crying then. Connor stepped closer. "You made your point, okay? You're not second best. Fine. But you proved it to the wrong people. You think a new building and some startup chick makes you better than us?" "I don't think I'm better," I said. "I just don't think I owe you anything." He opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head like I was some stranger he couldn't decode anymore. "You changed," he muttered. "No," I said. "You just finally saw me without a doormat under my feet." He didn't answer, just turned and walked out of the bakery, hands jammed in his pockets, leaving his ego behind like cigarette smoke. That night, I went home, a rented loft above the construction office, and sat with a bottle of wine on the windowsill. The city buzzed below. Somewhere, someone was celebrating. Somewhere else, someone was crying. I sat there, caught in the quiet between the two. And then my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it ring. Once. Twice. A dozen times. I didn't pick up. Because some calls aren't meant to be answered. Not until you're done rising. 3 weeks passed before I listened to the voicemail. I don't know what changed exactly. Maybe I was tired of carrying it. Maybe I was finally strong enough not to care what I heard. Or maybe, deep down, I just needed confirmation that the woman who raised me truly didn't understand what she did. I sat on the floor of my loft, legs crossed, phone on speaker, the city lights flickering outside the window behind me. "Hi, sweetheart," my mom's voice began, soft, rehearsed. "I don't know if you're still upset, but I miss you. We all do. Connor especially." That was a lie. I know things got out of hand. Maybe we said things we shouldn't have. But you have to understand, family makes mistakes. It doesn't mean you cut them out. You've always been the steady one, Owen. The strong one. Don't let one night erase all we've been through. One night. She still thought this was about one night. She didn't mention the years of comparison, the disregard, the way they used my home like a stage for someone else's story. She didn't mention calling me a backup son. It was all swept into the catch-all excuse of family makes mistakes. And then came the kicker. Anyway, I know this isn't your concern, but Connor and Natalie are struggling a bit. They were really counting on that house. They've been looking at apartments, but it's just not the same. I was wondering if maybe you could help, even just with a down payment. We all know you're doing well now. I paused the message, laughed, put the phone down and walked into the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and stared at the ceiling. It was astonishing, the entitlement, the delusion. Not even a full apology, just a roundabout way of saying, you're strong, so give us what we want. Again, that's when the idea hit me. Not out of spite, not even anger, but something colder, sharper, surgical. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't try to make them understand. I'd just show them. And I'd do it in the most poetic, irreversible way possible. There was a small, neglected property just 4 blocks from where Connor and Natalie were currently renting. A tired 2-bedroom duplex with warped floors, outdated plumbing, and a sagging fence. It had been on the market for almost a year, and no one wanted it. But it had one thing going for it. Location. I bought it. Quietly. Under my LLC. Paid cash. And then, over the next 2 months, I renovated it. Not into a home, but into a model unit. Every surface was cleaned, every fixture replaced, every inch repainted. The yard was transformed into a charming garden patio. The interior had a showroom shine. I even left a set of custom-stamped brochures on the kitchen island, listing rental terms under a fake property management name I'd created, Bright Pine Living. Then I did what they never expected. I reached out. Not directly, no. I had an assistant place a rental listing on all the major sites, knowing full well that Natalie was browsing daily. The photos were gorgeous. The price was steep, but just within range. And the location? Prime. Within 48 hours, they scheduled a tour. I made sure I wasn't there. Instead, I installed hidden cameras. For security, of course. Not audio, just visuals. I watched the footage later, alone, with a glass of wine and a blank expression. Natalie walked in first. Her face lit up. Connor followed, nodding approvingly, running a hand over the fresh countertops. They moved from room to room like it was a dream come true. She sat on the couch. He opened the brochure. And then he froze. Because right there, under the management section, was a signature line. Owen Whitmore, owner. His face went pale. Natalie asked something. I couldn't hear, and he showed her the paper. She looked confused, then concerned, then angry. They left quickly. I never heard from them. A week later, the property was rented to a nice couple with a toddler and a golden retriever. I gave them a discount, told them to treat it like their forever home. It was never for Connor. It never would be. The final blow came quietly. Remember the house I sold? The one they celebrated and like it was already theirs? Liana and I flipped it. Didn't even have to try hard. The renovations I'd done years ago were still fresh, and the market was on fire. We listed it high. Got 3 competing offers within a week. Sold it to a retired couple from Vermont who wanted to downsize into something warm and peaceful. As part of the close, we filmed a video walkthrough for promotional content. Just a little footage of the house in sunlight, drone shots of the garden, and a calm voiceover describing the features. I uploaded a copy to YouTube. Then, without fanfare, I emailed it to my mother with a one-line message. Here's the house you toasted in. Thought you'd want to see how it turned out. She never replied. I haven't seen my family since. No calls. No texts. No passive-aggressive Christmas cards. Just silence. And peace. Because here's the truth. I didn't need revenge to feel better. I needed distance. I needed to stop trying to prove I was worthy of love that was never unconditional in the first place. And now, years later, standing in the center of a high-rise I co-own with Liana, watching tenants sign leases, watching something grow that's mine and mine alone, I finally understand what being seen really means. Not by them, by myself. And that's the real ending. I didn't become the better son. I just stopped being the backup. For good.